in heaven. Stay by, stay alive. All three. Now you and me. 2, 1. We're going to have fun. Say, lights off.
Leading up to the release of Sonic Mania, my biggest questions were, what awesome new zones are going to be in it? And what awesome past zones are you going to be bringing back? Because when it comes to 2D Sonic games, if you don't have the zones, well, all you've really got is a fast blue hedgehog and awesome music. And since Sonic rolls around at the speed of sound, he's probably not going to be hearing the music anyway. Whoever you are, whether you grew up with Green Hill and Chemical Plant from Sonic 1 and 2, or whether your only Sonic experience is 2017's Sonic Mania with Studiopolis, Green Hill and Chemical Plant, we all have some of our favourites and least favourites. This list is going to be ranking from worst to best all of the zones from the classic Sonic games, specifically the 16-bit ones and Mania. I'd love to visit the 8-bit and modern 2D games in the future, but for now we're sticking with 16-bit. Also, I'm going to be including every single zone that you can access from the main single player of each game. This includes the really short boss only zones for the sake of having a complete list. Plus, Hidden Palace Zone was officially released on the 2013 mobile port of Sonic 2, so that's in too. The only major thing that this rule excludes is Angel Island Zone from Sonic Mania Plus, since that's exclusive to the game's Encore mode, but there's barely anything to that level anyway. Last thing to note is that with all zones from Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, I'm judging them based on their Sonic 3 and Knuckles versions, including the Knuckles exclusive sections. That goes the same with Mania. And any zone that came back in Mania will be on the list twice, as both its original and Mania variant. So that makes 7 zones from Sonic 1, 11 zones from Sonic 2, plus 1 for Hidden Palace Zone, which makes 12, 7 from Sonic CD, 6 from Sonic 3, 8 from Sonic and Knuckles, and 13 from Sonic Mania. That makes 53 zones in total. Yep, I was surprised there were that many too. Well, that was a slow intro, and like my boy Sonic always says, we have to go quickly, so let's start with number 53. Labyrinth Zone. Ugh. Ugh. The sluggish controls, the instant deaths, the unfairly placed obstacles. Ugh. I hate this zone so much. Underwater levels in Sonic games are pretty hit and miss, and this is the water level that they introduced the series with? The obstacles that you can't see until it's too late just knock you back into the water to drown, and that boss at the end is the worst. No rings, lots of unseeable hazards, and lots of spikes. I hate spikes, especially in Sonic 1. And you're on a time limit. If I was alive when Sonic 1 came out and this was my introduction to the series, this level might have made me hate the Sonic series for life. Death Egg Zone from Sonic 2 is just a boss fight with Mecha Sonic and the Egg Robo. The Mecha Sonic fight isn't too bad, but the fight with Egg Robo is so irritating when you don't know how to beat it. It's hard to figure out when you're allowed to get your hits in, and if you do the fight too slowly you'll run out of time and die. Oh, and there are no rings in the whole zone. Honestly, that's the biggest problem, they don't even give you a chance. Hidden Palace Zone from Sonic and Knuckles is another zone that is just the boss. This time it's a fight with the non-chuckling enchilada himself, Knuckles. The fight is only a hair harder than the Knuckles fight in Sonic Adventure.
Oh no!
There's really nothing to this zone at all, and if you're playing as Knux, it's literally just a scenic zone. The Sonic 1 boss only zone, Final Zone, has a better boss fight than the previous 2 entries. It's a decent and fair fight where you have to avoid getting squashed. It's not the easiest boss in the series, but I do think it's still too easy for final boss status. Scrap Brain Zone is the last full zone from the first Sonic game. The enemies and obstructions are all pretty decent, but their placement isn't always the best. There's a lot of holes that you can get stuck in, which really slows the pace of the levels. And then there's the final act. No. Not Labyrinth Zone again. No. No. Why, Knuckles-san? Why? Carnival Night Zone seems okay at first, but it's way too long. Too easy to unknowingly head backwards in the level, and too easy to get squashed. It's even worse if you're playing as Knuckles. I always used to get stuck on the one rotating platform because the game doesn't indicate that you have to use the up and down buttons to move it. I thought you had to jump. It might just be me, but the mechanics of Sonic on the Tornado in Sky Chase Zone have always just seemed pretty buggy. You sometimes get squashed by seemingly nothing, and sometimes you just die when you spin dash. It's also hard to judge if you're going to land on an enemy first or land on the tornado, cancelling the spin jump and then damaging yourself when you touch the enemy. The tornado sections aren't the worst thing in the world, but there's much to be improved. Aquatic Ruin Zone isn't a bad underwater zone, and I like that you can stay above water for most of it if you're good enough to stick to the higher paths. A few wrong turns though can get you stuck underwater as some really tedious sections. The first zone to be added into a classic Sonic game in almost 20 years, and it's okay. The visual theme and music are excellent and the level layout is great, but the boss really isn't. You have to bait Robotnik and the spiky ball at the same time so that they line up perfectly, allowing for you to get some shots in. It's hard and not really that fun. If the boss was better and this zone was fully fleshed out into more than one act, this zone could have been a lot higher up. Marble Garden Zone isn't one that I'm particularly fond of from Sonic 3. I have a love-hate relationship with the spinning top. I love the idea of it and the potential that it has, but using it to get through the level can be a bit frustrating. Plus, this zone really overstays its welcome. When you think you're near the end, here's another tough time challenge. I imagine a lot of people thought that this zone would be low down. Oil Ocean Zone isn't one of my favourites from Sonic 2, but it isn't terrible. It has a good sense of speed and decent use of branching paths, and I like flying around in those cannon things. It's when you get low in the level that you kind of get squashed by nothing. Or you can get squashed by those flame propelled platforms. Getting squashed in Sonic levels really isn't all that fun. The Mania version of Oil Ocean Zone is pretty similar, but with the added mechanic in the second act where the zone fills with smoke. It's marginally better than the original, but I can't really place it higher because it has some of the worst bosses in Sonic Mania. The Sonic sections of Ice Cap Zone are pretty good and have a good use of verticality, but there are a few annoying sections with swinging platforms when you're deep in the cave that slows the flow down quite a bit. Overall though, it's a pretty good zone when you're playing as Sonic, but if you're playing as Knuckles, the level becomes a huge drag, with some of the most awkward platforming in the game. Sonic CD doesn't really have any bad zones per se, but there are a few zones in the game that I feel lack an identity, or any sort of real hook. Palm Tree Panic is okay, but just feels like a bit of a bland opening level, a generic copy of Green Hill Zone, plus it has one of the worst bosses of the classic Sonic games. Likewise, Collision Chaos feels like a generic copy of Spring Yard Zone and one that's not as fun. The boss is a bit more interesting than Palm Tree Panic, but doesn't play incredibly well. I might have put Metropolis Zone higher if it wasn't the only level in Sonic 2 with 3 acts. The first 2 acts are long enough as it is, and the third just feels like unnecessary padding. The levels themselves are okay with some decent gimmicks, but the enemy placement could have used a touch up. I like the boss though. Quartz Quadrant doesn't feel like a copy of anything, but like the last 2 Sonic CD entries, it's sort of just these 2 open levels that don't really have a lot going on. This one does have the conveyor belts, which are kind of cool I suppose, and I do like the boss of Quartz Quadrant, plus the Japanese or European Quartz Quadrant present music is just too good. I originally had Sandopolis Zone placed in the 40s, and that's mainly because of the first act. There's not really a lot going on and it really overstays its welcome. Also, it has one of the worst bosses in Sonic history, but honestly the second act really pulls it up. The timed ghost mechanic is really interesting, and there's some fun puzzles and escape sequences throughout that justify the act's length, and it has a pretty good boss fight at the end. So we get to the first zone that's exclusive to Super or Hypersonic, depending on if you collected 7 or 14 emeralds. It's a really cool boss fight where you have to take the time to build up rings and then go in close for the kill. It's not too difficult, but presents enough of a challenge to make a great extra boss fight for those completionists. Seeing Super Sonic flying through space for the first time is such a cool idea that they pretty much reused in most future Sonic games. I can't really place it much higher on the list, seeing as it is just a boss fight. The same goes for Egg Reverie Zone, which is the additional zone in Sonic Mania that sees you take down Dr. Eggman and the Phantom King at the same time. It's the type of stuff that fanfiction is made of. I like a lot about Metallic Madness from Sonic CD. The level looks amazing, the music's fantastic, and the final boss is really cool too. There's even a few sections where you can be turned into Mini Sonic. It has all the makings of a great Sonic stage. There's just one big problem though. Some parts can be impossible to navigate, especially if you go into the past.
Hey.
I guarantee that you will be lost for a long time. When I was recording this footage, I could not figure out how to beat the level in the past, so I had to go back into the present. It's such a shame because Metallic Madness is a great zone otherwise. Marble Zone is the second zone in the whole series and a huge change of pace from Green Hill Zone. It shows that even though Sonic's marketing revolved around speed, the game's levels don't really do that. Marble Zone is all about slow platforming and it does it fairly well. Just be careful that you don't fall down any holes because you could end up trapping yourself or having to retread a lot of steps. I'm sure Green Hill Zone is very nostalgic for a lot of people, and it's a good zone, but it's far from being one of the best. The first act in particular is very well made, where it's easy to get a high speed with the loop-de-loops and tubes, and gather loads of rings to hop right into the bonus stage. It really gets you pumped up for the rest of the game. Then there's Act 2, which is okay too, but Act 3 is a nightmare because of the placement of the spikes. The previous acts teach that going fast is good and fun, but if you do it in this level, you're going to fall to your instant death in several different sections of the level. If Act 3 didn't exist, this zone would definitely be placed higher. Don't fear Green Hill Zone fanboys, as another version of Green Hill Zone will appear much higher on the list. Number 30, Green Hill Zone... Nah, I'm just joking. Number 30, Wing Fortress Zone, one of the last zones from Sonic 2. Following Sky Chase Zone, Wing Fortress Zone works really well because it feels that the zones are starting to progress upwards as we get closer to the Death Egg. It's a cool zone where there isn't much of a floor, making for some good challenging platforming sections. The boss though is kind of... Apart from that though, not too many complaints, but it does kind of feel like a poor man's flying battery zone. Chemical Plant Zone is another love-hate zone for me. The zone has tons of branching paths and an excellent sense of speed. Perhaps too much speed. The parts where the water rises though, I'm not a huge fan of, especially because it's very easy to fall back down into it. The boss fight is decent, but it can be quite tough to stay on the platform. One of the better zones from the original Sonic, Spring Yard Zone. There's a lot going on in this zone with sections where you have to go as low as possible so that you can shoot right up to the top. The springs seem to have more of a purpose than those in Collision Chaos. I don't find the spiked ball sections too annoying, and I feel like they fit with the physics of the first game. Those roller enemies kinda suck, but besides that, fun level. Lava Reef Zone is one of the more atmospheric zones in the Sonic games and feels like something straight out of Metroid. The first act seems a little more open with a greater focus on speed, while the second act is more claustrophobic. I love how different the music is in Act 2. Sonic's boss fight in Act 2 is pretty cool, but for some reason Knuckles just straight up lacks a boss fight in Act 2. The Death Egg Zone is a great way to cap off Sonic and Knuckles, or if you've collected 7 or 14 emeralds, an awesome build up to the Doomsday Zone. Having the final levels in space is something that the Sonic series began doing again and again, and the Death Egg Zone is a great version. There's a lot of great futuristic platforms and hazards, one of which is a moving conveyor belt, which is an awesome touch, especially if you don't have towels for a partner. The boss of Act 2 though is kind of easy to cheese. To me, Hilltop Zone just feels completely different to every single other zone, like it's from a different series altogether. I don't know what it is, it just looks like it has a different art style or something. Whenever I play Sonic 2 and I get to Hilltop, I just think, oh yeah, this weird zone, and I kind of like it for that. The zone itself is pretty cool though, with its sliding platforms, seesaws, and rising lava sections, which you can plow through with invincibility. Lava Reef Zone Mania remixes the zone from Sonic and Knuckles, adding in elements from Sonic 2's Hilltop Zone and Sonic CD's Quartz Quadrant. Also, the better boss fights, one of which this time is exclusive to Knuckles, cleaner level design and beautiful music make it quite the improvement. Zones from Sonic CD tend to be designed in a way that pretty much every part of the level is accessible at all times, allowing for more exploration. This works wonders with Tidal Tempest, as half of the level is underwater or the other half is on land. If you're getting tired of the slower level downstairs, it's not too hard to find a way back up. It's one of the best levels with underwater sections. Sonic 1 definitely didn't have the best zones in the series, seeing as my favourite zone is at number 22. But Starlight Zone is a good one. The levels are fairly short and straightforward with some good fun platforming and seesaw sections. It's got a really unique and sweet boss fight too. Emerald Hill Zone is basically Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1 without the taint of Act 3. It's just a chill opening level with a couple loop-de-loops and corkscrews thrown in to look cool. It's also designed in a way that you can get all 7 emeralds in this zone alone. And here's the really good version of Green Hill Zone. The first act is just like the original first act, which we all know and love, but the second act cranks the awesomeness way up, introducing zip lines and burnable bridges, and some fun alternate routes to some giant rings. The remixed first boss is awesome and it has a much better Egg Robo fight. Launch Base Zone is the end level of Sonic 3 and our launching off point to the story of Sonic and Knuckles. It's a fairly long and dangerous level, but it isn't unfair like Metropolis Zone and it has some great bosses. The Knuckles sections in particular are very enjoyable. Chemical Plant Zone Mania features the same awesome high-speed gameplay from the first one, but the second act changes it up with these fun bouncy sections like Wacky Workbench. And that boss in Act 2 is just delightful. But why did they copy and paste the worst part from the original into the Mania version? Speaking of Wacky Workbench, Wacky Workbench! This zone jumps between hazardous tight spaces to a big open area where you bounce around like crazy. The challenge is to control yourself so you can find and work your way through the tighter sections. You also have to avoid the electric current going through most of the level. It may sound annoying, but I find it to be a lot of fun. Crappy boss fight though. The best underwater level. I say underwater level, but you're not really underwater for long in Hydrocity Zone. Whenever you go underwater, it's not long before the level flings you right back up, and it's fun to see how high you can go and all the secrets that you can find high up. But that Whirlpool Machine boss sucks. The Mania version of Hydrocity Zone is higher up because of boats. and the reverse role boss fight in Act 1 is a blast. But why did they bring back the bad boss fight from Sonic 3? Why? Angel Island Zone starts Sonic 3 off strong with a great opening level. It's fairly short and linear and the secrets are quite easy to find, which introduces the player to the new Giant Ring bonuses. It's one of the most transformative levels, with the second half being completely scorched. That, and we get a great introduction to Knuckles and this game's more cinematic way of storytelling. It's just a great first level. Not as good as Mushroom Hill Zone though. It's similar to Angel Island Zone with its secrets, but there's much more opportunity to explore in Mushroom Hill with its great height. And bouncing on the mushrooms is just fun. The second boss is excellent, but the first boss, pretty bad. Sky Sanctuary Zone probably has the best cutscenes in the Sonic 3 and Knuckles saga, with Knuckles finally teaming up with the Blue Blood. The crumbling away of the zone is also damn awesome. Sonic's version of the level is this epic climb towards the Death Egg while running into throwbacks to past bosses. Knuckles' version is less exciting with just a single fight with Mecha Sonic, and one that isn't that great, which is a shame. Yay! Casino Night Zone. This is a pretty iconic zone from Sonic 2. As you make your way through the levels, there are usable pinball tables and slot machines that you can use to rack up your ring count before you move on. It's a really clever idea and one that they continue to reuse. The boss even uses the pinball mechanic too. It's got a few parts where it's a bit too easy to get squashed, but overall Flying Battery Zone is a pretty great zone. It jumps between some speedy interior sections to more precise platforming sections on the exterior with the bottomless pits. Getting propelled from the flame jets and swinging around parts of the Flying Fortress feels really good to do. The two bosses are pretty good too. This may just be a personal thing, but I really enjoy Mystic Cave Zone from Sonic 2, especially that jamming music. As you're making your way through, you could accidentally activate something that blocks your way, forcing you to work your way around to another of the many routes. It's a bit of a maze, but a linear one, if that makes sense. It's really satisfying to land on the levers and then jump into the path that leads forward. I couldn't really tell what this zone was based off at first, but then I realised it was inspired by the printing press. It looks pretty sweet and the level feels huge. There's so many different paths that you'll find it hard to run through the level the same way twice. The second act gets really awesome with the frozen block of ice mechanic that feels like it's something straight out of Wario Land 2, and the heavy Shinobi boss fight which feels like something straight out of, well, Shinobi. Act 1 of Flying Battery Zone Mania is just as good as the zone from Sonic and Knuckles, but Act 2 really steps its game up. The exterior sections are excellent with the visuals of the thunderstorm, the swinging challenges, and the inclusion of the electric circuit from Wacky Workbench. And that arrangement of the Flying Battery song is just phenomenal. Stardust Speedway is such a feel-good zone with the bright colours and light machine that makes it feel like a party. Until you go into the past, of course. This zone is one of the best zones for speed and it feels really great to get a good time in. All versions of the zone have great music in the Japanese and European version, and some of the US music isn't bad either. Stardust Speedway also has one of the coolest moments in Sonic history, the race between Sonic and Metal Sonic. This is the only time I had trouble deciding whether the Mania version or the original version of a zone was better. I ultimately decided to pick Mania because the second act, where it throws the past version of the zone on its head, is really cool. Also, the boss battle with Metal Sonic is better. The first version wasn't perfect, but it was made much better in Sonic Mania Plus. Oh man, that Knuckles version of the Mirage Saloon Zone music is a tune! I think that the Knuckles version of the first act is the best Knuckles optimized version of a level that the classic Sonic games have ever seen. The pistol cannons in Act 2 are awesome, and the boss fight that brings back some long lost Sonic characters is just great to see. I've got to admit, I still don't really like the tornado sections in the first act for Sonic and Tails, but that isn't enough to stop this from being one of my favourite zones. Titanic Monarch Zone is a very unique zone of its second act, and it's an excellent way to round off Sonic Mania if you're playing as Tails or Knuckles, or didn't collect all 7 emeralds as Sonic. The second act is definitely the highlight. It presents 4 difficult challenges that you can attack in any order. If you fail the challenges, you don't immediately die, it just pushes you back a bit. Once all challenges are cleared, you get to the final boss, which isn't the hardest boss in the world, but it is a treat for the eyes and ears. Studiopolis Zone was the first new zone that they showed off for Sonic Mania, and it looked incredible. When Mania was announced, I kinda just thought, okay, a new classic Sonic game in the style of the Mega Drive ones, that's cool. But when I played through Studiopolis at Summer of Sonic 2016, I knew this was going to be something special. This zone is the definition of sensory overload. One minute you'll be launching off of clapboards, then zipping through satellite dishes another. And anytime I play this zone, I can't help but tap my feet to the funkiest Sonic jam. Let's just jump right into number 1, Metallic Madness Zone Mania. The winner of 2017's Most Improved Zone. I genuinely enjoy Metallic Madness from Sonic CD, but when you get stuck into the maze it's too hard to break out of. Sonic Mania takes the maze away completely and just uses the best elements of Metallic Madness in a linear but more puzzle themed level. You can swivel into the background or completely jump into the background layer with some swift platforming fun. The tiny sections are back and better, being more condensed sections. The boss from Final Zone returns and feels much better as a mid-boss than the final boss of the game. And the boss of Act 2 plucks at those nostalgia heartstrings. And let's not forget to mention the outstanding music of both Act 1 and Act 2. I have Sonic Mania downloaded on my PS4, and sometimes after a good session of a story-driven game, I'll just quickly jump into Sonic Mania, turn the sound effects down and the music up, and play through some Metallic Madness Zone. It's undoubtedly my #1 favourite zone from classic Sonic games. Thanks for watching and have fun playing video games.